Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 4 of Doom Time. And it's no longer me rambling about personal problems. We've introduced you to my good friend Spitflyer,
How's it going, guys?
the good old Aussie man. I think the easiest way for me to introduce you is basically that we met a very long time ago. I don't recall if it was it TeamSpeak?
It probably was. It was probably through the gentleman's hangar, actually.
Yeah, the gentleman's
Like,
hangar. It's a bit.
mm,
It was a long, long time ago. And then we moved to Skype, and the whole moderating team blew up. And
mhm.
you're probably most known for being the guy who edited and created the highlights compilation for my stream.
Yeah, actually, at least among the moderators, the lot of us, that and Bacon being the other one that was really notorious. But yeah, honestly, I thought I'd just give it a go. I thought, you know what, it's some content that I could make. I had a really crappy laptop at the time, and now I've got like top of the range. But um, yeah, it was just something I could do, something I could make content on, maybe get some sort of notoriety, if you will. And um, in the end, I ended up basically creating a whole archive of like interesting or funny moments. Looking back on it, the editing's a bit dated and rubbish, but you learn and you grow. But the highlights are just so cool to go back and look out on now. It's been like 7 years. So this is really starting to be like archival footage, and it's just up there, like so cool.
Yeah, it's insane how quickly time actually passed. I too sometimes go back and look at the clips just sort of to reminisce
Mm.
and look at how foolish I used to be and how childish I guess the whole aspect looks like when you start growing up and all the jokes. But it brings back this sort of livelihood of how maybe more relaxed life was back then when you still don't have the responsibilities of adulthood. But for me, it was wonderful because I really think what you managed to do is sort of you killed two birds with one stone, right? You were able to
Yeah,
practice your editing game, and at the same time, it also was a way for you to gain, like I said, notoriety, right? You got to create traction on your own channel, which has now led you to, I believe, you have more subscribers than me at this point, right?
yeah, we're currently sitting at 63,000 subscribers. I'd love to get to a 100K, but like, slow steps. Honestly, it was just good. It's just good to do something, just to learn something new, and I guess something to sort of grow on, right?
Hmm.
You look back, and I say this to myself every so often. If you don't look back at yourself every 5 years and cringe a little bit, it means that you haven't grown at all. So you basically need to improve to the point where you're getting like cringy at you're like cringing at your old antics and your old self, because like that's how much you've evolved, that you would look at someone who does the same thing and go, oh my god, I would never want to be like them.
Absolutely, I think that hits the nail on the spot. It reminds me of that adage. I
Yeah,
think it's compare yourself to who you were yesterday, right? And sort of try to always
yeah,
be better and stronger.
absolutely. All the struggles that you go through life, and like even if you live a fairly cushy life, like um I grew up middle class, like I am working a pretty good paying job. I have plenty of money. It's just like you'll still come across problems. There'll still be something that like really cuts you deep,
Hmm.
and learning to bounce back from that, and seeing like, oh, all these years ago I got, you know, upset over, I don't know, some exam that I got scored poorly in or something like that, and how much more resilient you are now. It really does. Those moments like define you in your growth as a person. It's so good.
Yeah, this actually makes you want to prompt an impromptu question, in fact, which is
Hmm.
because we've all been in a position where we've either been bullied in school or we were the bullies. I think most
Yeah.
people have sort of played both roles to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And for me, I noticed that when I was on the internet, especially with my sort of notoriety, I think some people might even say I was like the Andrew Tate of WarThunder or something like that because I was all over the
I would say
place.
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it on one hand it falls down to having to play a character, which was also one of the reasons which helped me develop the accent because you have to move yourself out from your life. And I think most of us do that. If maybe in WarThunder it was harder to do, but like role-playing games are popular for this exact reason. People are able to escape their everyday life and become a different version of themselves, a supposedly better or happier version. And it,
Yeah, but even just in video games in general, like you get to be a fighter pilot in War Thunder, or in RuneScape you get to be some epic guy that like goes around questing
slays
and like
dragons and
literally like you like got all this cool stuff. In in some games, like you just amass so much wealth in the game, and you're like, oh, or like you're an empire builder, like all these sorts of things. It's all a form of escapism, right?
But I also think that it builds character, it builds that skin, because when I was going through, I guess primary school, I was, I want to say like soft bullied. In high school,
Yeah.
I didn't really care, and I might have been one of the guys who actually did some of the bullying. And then when I was online, I realized that you're suddenly protected by the law of anonymity, because you have whatever
Yes.
username and you can attack whomever, however you like. And
Yeah.
because of my character, it didn't really get to me, I feel. There were maybe a few moments, right? Like one thing I recall is the Ego Boy video actually that Bookends made, because it came out.
Yeah.
Because it was a horror moment for me, because it was a New Year's. I woke up on the 1st of January. I was, completely slushed from all the partying the other day, and the guy had uploaded a video which was so well made. Kudos to him, but so specific at attacking me that I think that one was one of the first moments, or at least one that I recall today, that got to me, that made me made me irksome almost. But it helps develop that skin, on Twitch. There was a lot of that live attacking going on, YouTube comments. And I think
with YouTube comments, it's easy, right? Like you just ignore it. But with with Twitch, with it live, with it in the moment, it's harder to just step away and put it down.
But I mean, it's also the problem. You know how you read YouTube comments and you have like 10 guys, all positive, like it's a great video, make more. Then you find that one comment that's bad, and you focus on that comment so vehemently that it just discourages you from making more content.
Yeah, well, actually, one of my very first videos. So I had this really bad laptop. I don't even know what year it was from. I'm pretty sure it had like it was either a single core or a 2-core laptop CPU. It had 4 gig of RAM. It was so bad. But I could record it like ULQ at 30 FPS, and it was great. It was all I wanted. And I uploaded this montage. I think it's still up there somewhere. And it's got like some rubbishy kills. And someone literally said like, "Why are you making content? This is terrible. Like, just don't make content." And it's one of the first really like rough comments that cut you deep. But then you look at down the line, like where I am now, where people say sometimes they might say something similar, right? You build that resilience, and you understand that these people are sort of working on the face of anonymity. They actually don't have any repercussions from this. There's no teacher to give them a detention, or no parents to give them some sort of discipline. It's like you understand that, maybe you were that kid at one point, and you've grown to the point where you just sort of wince or cringe that, hey, at least that's not me anymore. And that growth is so important. It's so forming for a lot of content creators. But I suppose it would also be in a similar way in real life, like just in the street, or that sort of applying that restraint to not just like go all in and just deck the shit out of someone because they said something. It's sort of that ability to learn and grow that's really powerful and really important. And it's so good. I love it. It's just very important to do.
Would you say that first comment, which would discourage most people, would you say that it in a way gave you the fire that was required? Because I notice sometimes, you talk to friends or even family sometimes, and you have an idea, right? You're full of ideas. You're like, I want to do something. It could be a project, could be business. And often enough, they will stop at the first problem they encounter, right? They'll give you something that's like, oh, it's never going to work because of this. You're never going to succeed because of all these reasons.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel that when people do that, there's a select few individuals who are capable of looking beyond that and saying, no, I'm going to make this work. Like, in spite of everything you say, just to prove you wrong, I'll make it work. Because I think I've had many moments, where people said you wouldn't succeed, or you wouldn't develop your English to a certain level. You're not going to become good at WarThunder. And if you take those things at face value and you believe them, and that becomes your sort of subconsciousness, I think then you're actually destined to fail, right? But if you take it and sort of use it as flame, because I think, I can't speak for women, right? I don't want to be sexist here, but I think men, we really develop ourselves through these adversities, through the hardest of times. I had a really good conversation with Koza the other day. I also want to have him on the podcast. And he and I were talking a lot about how, it takes it's the biggest of lows that we experience that create the best version of ourselves, and you look back and you think, wow, how much progress I've made. Exactly how you were talking about how you always try to compare yourself to the person you were 5 years back, and you always want to see that progress. And if anything, I often feel like I'm not progressing enough. Like, even right now, it's January, it's the new year. I've been grinding really, really hard for 21 days now. And I still feel like it's not enough. And I don't think of it in a bad way, but as in, it's great that I'm making progress, but I even want to make more. Like, I don't want to just reach, a checkpoint and then be like, okay, I'm going to stay here for another year and then make another step. Like, you have to keep on.
It's just motivation to sort of continue to get better, isn't it? Yeah. And you're absolutely right about those sort of crucial defining moments, those toughest moments. They really do. They encourage you, or at least they give you the momentum to sort of swing back. And then when you swing back and you follow through, that's when you develop your growth. Like, think about like an olive branch. So not olive, grapevine. My dad's got some grapevines, right? And the way that you encourage the best growth is you cut down every last branch except the strongest two, and then the strongest two are the ones that go on to be the most fruitful. So you break a human down into their two smallest parts, and then from there you go and make something really, really beautiful. Like, and that trimming hurts. That trimming is something that you like really have to bear, just grin and bear through. And it's so hard, especially if you don't have a support structure around you. You'll fall over. But if you can just sort of proceed through that, you actually find that you'll come up on the other side a lot better than you originally were.
That's a really, really good comparison. Yeah, you have to be, I always say that in order to form clay, you have to soften it. To create a sword, you have to first temper with the metal. And in fact, you have to temper with the metal several times. Because I know for me, I went through, several sort of these hardships in life. And every time you think you're sort of out of the darkness, it's still there, right? It's always sort of lingering in the background, and it should. I don't think that you should ever really feel 100% comfortable, because that comfort creates complacency, and at that point you stop growing.
Yeah, now, absolutely.
Yeah, and if you're like, 70, 80 years old, then I guess at that point I can afford to be complacent. But in your early 20s, late 20s, even early 30s, as a man, you have to constantly sort of strive for that next big thing. And I think, I don't know how you're perceiving life at the moment. Obviously, you have a career which you're very well settled in, and I assume you're quite happy with where you are, with the direction in which you're headed. Me, on the other hand, I'm sort of, I've always been a character which likes trying different things. I feel like I have to, tip my toe in every single type of swimming pool to figure out which one's really for me. And in the process of doing that, you start asking yourself those, I guess, important questions. What am I good at? What do I see myself doing in several years? And often what I saw happen was that people would find something they would ultimately want to do, and then they would stop at the first reason why they can't do it. And I spoke to many friends, I spoke to some family members, and they all encountered the same, I guess, obstacle, and that is the lack of will to go, one step beyond, to do what's, I guess, perceived as impossible. And that reminds me of that, my story of WarThunder, because when I started making content, this is back when we would still talk on Skype, and I met this one kid. He was from Israel. I think his name was Daniel. And me and him had this brilliant idea. This was back in, I want to say 2016, of like creating a YouTube channel or something. Like it was, I think that's when the idea started, because every kid wants to be a YouTuber, right? Every kid wants that dream of not having a regular job, and they can just make content online, get rich.
It's the fame and the playing games, really. It looks like an easy life, but fuck.
No.
Like if you want to do YouTube, it's 12-hour days every day, or you fall behind. And then when you fall behind, you haven't got afternoon shift to come and pick up your leftovers.
No.
You have to be the one to do it. So it's just so grueling.
I'd say some people have had a lot of, I hate using the word luck, but they had fortune with, when they started making content, how things sort of picked up. But even then, I always have feared that a YouTube channel there are very few, I want to say percentage-wise, probably, in the 0.01% that they can do it throughout their life. Because the span of a YouTube life, I think, if you were to draw some type of a graph, it reaches a peak and then it just starts to stagnate. That's why you see so many channels which have millions of subscribers, but then they get maybe 10, 15,000 views. And whilst they'll still be able to pull some income, I think there comes a time where they have to start diversifying into other sorts of streams, whether that's getting a regular job or playing with investments, starting a business, which isn't to say it's bad, but it creates the question of how far can you go with just YouTube? Like where does it end?
I think if you've got a certain personality type, like these are the types of people that are like built for TV. You'll see it. There are certain people that are just sort of, they have the charisma, they have the personality for TV, and they just like endure through the years, like Markiplier and PewDiePie. They're two of the big ones that I can think of. But most people don't have that level of charisma. Like most people, like I don't think I have that level of charisma. I don't think I could do YouTube for 20, 30 years. I honestly think I would just want to move on to something more quiet. But like a lot of people come in with this aspiration, and aspiration's good, but there's no understanding that it takes a lot more effort than they think. And these people sort of fall down, like you said earlier, at the first hurdle. And when you do that, it's pretty much, if you don't get up, then you're screwed. You don't get anywhere. And I think that's where one of the reasons why you end up with like 1% of YouTubers just absolutely creaming it, and the rest are just like not even making minimum wage. Like my YouTube channel still does not make minimum wage. But this is something that I do for fun. But if you wanted to do it as a career and you had the output that I had, you would be screwed. And that's about 4 hours a day, maybe 5 hours a day. You'd be working really hard just to make ends meet.
Yeah. They don't see the numbers that go into it. Even I didn't see the numbers until I realized 10,000 hours in just WarThunder, and that's excluding the time spent, learning how to do Photoshop, Premiere Pro, Adobe After Effects, writing all the descriptions, creating all the thumbnails and stuff. A lot goes into it. Not to mention, nowadays you have to, at least to a certain level, master search engine optimization. What keywords you're using, what the target audience is. You've got these shadow bans happening. You've got to watch for demonetizations. You have to not curse. Would you say that the accessibility of YouTube, in the sense that nowadays anybody can make content because, even your phones is good enough. It's no longer that shitty laptop you have. Would you say that this accessibility, which has allowed everyone to make content, is a net good or a net bad?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I look at TikTok as the primary double-edged sword. Now, literally everyone has a phone, even 14-year-olds and 10-year-olds. So some of my shifts are at a children's hospital, and I see 3 and 2-year-olds scrolling TikTok. Like, it's accessible to everyone, and everyone who can make a TikTok, like basically everyone who can stand and dance around can make a TikTok. So there are some people that really put that to good use. There's one guy who talks about military strategy. There's a guy that I really like who covers like some weird, odd, obscure facts about things, and these are all in bite-sized, minute-long chunks. There's a lady that does like discussion about lakes and bodies of water and where they come from, or all these like weird things that I never would have even considered. But then on the other side, you just have a vehicle for people that are in a bad place to drive themselves further into the ground, because the people that are one consuming this content might the algorithm will draw them into more and more extremes. Like you watch one Andrew Tate video, and then all of a sudden you get like all these TikToks that are like Europe is for white people and things like that. Like that's not what I was after. I was just after seeing someone controversial. Like show me some more controversy, not white nationalist stuff. And then it goes the other way as well, like not politically but emotionally, where you have people that are really depressed, and you just end up with them wallowing in their own self-pity. So whilst there is so much of a vehicle for good, it's what you make of it. And of course, people who aren't as sort of emotionally like together, people who are like struggling a little bit will find it to be a tool for evil. Like my colleagues, a lot of the women have struggle with body image. They're like in their mid-30s and they're struggling with their body image because their body's slowly degrading. And you know, a lot of what especially a lady like basically looks at their body and sees that as their vehicle to sort of sustain a mate. It's really hard for them, and they found that with Instagram, like all these models with all this clothing and everything, it was actually making them more depressed. So they just deleted Instagram, and they're like, they come in and they're like smiling, and I'm like, oh my god, you look so much better than you did 2 weeks ago. You actually look happier, and it actually makes you light up the room. So it's a vehicle of good, but it's also a vehicle of evil, or it's that double-edged sword. So it's whatever you make of it. Now, with your content, like I think you made an interesting sort of niche. It was like, how do I use this plane to get better? How do I improve myself? Is that sort of what you were going for, or how did you try and approach video content? Like, what was your ethos, your primary drive?
It's a really good question. I think, when I started, it was just about, I just wanted to make some type of video. And then I realized there was, I think it was like the how to fly sim with mouse. It was one of those videos that to this day is still one of the most successful ones. I realized there was people asking for how to, because I think people, and not just in video games, but in life in general, they're looking for some sort of step-by-step. They're looking for a guide, whether this
Guidance.
is, how to use Tinder, how to start a business, anything. They always want a step-by-step guide. Like, if it worked for him, it's going to work for me. And the problem that started was that as I was spending more time playing, as I was getting better, I realized that there was a I don't know if this discongruence is a word, but that's what comes to mind, is between what the game developer was doing, what the gamer was doing, the average player, and what was the net good, right? Because people can hate me for all they want, but I know, I'm convinced of it, I'll take it to my grave, that if me and the ideas of a couple of other content creators, which at the time we were trying to make a change, the dream job that I wanted to have, it wasn't to be a content creator. I actually really wanted to be a consultant for them. I wanted to be the guy in the shadows I just wanted to filter. So like, Gaijin would be like, let's say Gaijin as a company would say, we want more money, right? And then you'd look at what the community wants, and then you'd have this, let's say 10 people who are in the elite of the game. You're talking, take a guy from the best Julian community, take a guy from who's best at arcade, so specialists in their own fields, and use them as a firewall between all the content that comes through. Because what I saw happen is that I would sit there with thousands of hours of gameplay, and then I would be contradicted by a guy who started playing 2 weeks ago. And you have a limited amount of moderators in this game. And this limited amount of moderators, I think at some point it was just like Stoner or whatever the guy's name was, like one dude reading all the suggestions in the forums, and he doesn't have time to play the game. You know, so like I'll never forget. I think it was the Arado B2, the one with no guns, just 3 bombs. That's it. And he was reading some suggestions on it, and I looked up his stats, and I realized that so the guy who was the firewall between the information that comes from the community to Gaijin was collecting this information for a plane, which he flew like 2 times, right? And I felt bad for in all aspects, because he's not a bad person. It's just he's got a job where he's being bombarded with information and he has to make choices, and there's no way for him to make good choices. So my dream was that we would work as some sort of net good, this firewall where the information that was coming from the community would be filtered by us, and then we could create, like a Google Doc or something where we would combine the greatest ideas. And that failed. It failed miserably, in fact. And I went as far as to contact Anton at the time, the CEO.
Yeah, I remember that.
I guess I was doing nuclear option. I mean, it reminds me of how, you go through a breakup and then you try to get the girl back and you just do everything, all the wrong things, but because you're trying to do something that's genuinely good. But you're not thinking
desperation,
straight.
right?
Yeah, it's complete desperation. And I realized that wasn't working, that, the good cop technique wasn't going to go through. Because I think I was in Greece with my family, leeching off of the internet in the lobby, having a Discord call with a few moderators. And I'm I've got nothing there, no computer, no piece of paper, and I'm listing battle ratings from the top of my head, like where they have to change. Put the P47 or the P51 from 4.3 to 4.7. And as I'm talking to this moderator, I realize that he has no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm thinking, how am I supposed to get the information through when the guy that's currently the firewall, doesn't know what he's doing? It's like if you have a problem with your computer and you're calling up the support service and the support service, doesn't have the info, then you're stuck. Yeah. And so I looked for the alternative, and the alternative for me was really to do the nuclear option again, which would also benefit the channel, and that was to be controversial. To start, and frankly, that was the most fun I ever had. I think it was 2019 when I was already like, I've quit the game. I didn't really care for it. And I was just, E100 and mouse and this, and just,
Ferdinand.
I was shitting on them. Yeah. I was like, and I was enjoying it. In fact, if I still made content, that would be the type of content I would make, because I wanted to inspire a change. I wanted to inspire people to start thinking with their own head. And even though it got a lot of people, vocal, nothing really ultimately happened. And that's when I decided that it wasn't worth my time, because if this was my livelihood, perhaps, but I realized this wasn't going to be my livelihood at the moment that I realized that the dream of working with this company wasn't going to come to tuition.
Yeah.
Now, some got, I guess, lucky. Oxy and Mike goes boom, right? They now work for Gaijin. Albeit they work for Gaijin.
Copsy.
Yeah. Oh, Copsy too. Wonderful.
Yeah. And Pandro as well.
Would they probably do tournaments, or is it?
Pandramoto, he's doing so Pandra's doing like video content. He's doing like cinematics, like full on. Apparently he's working on something super complicated at the moment. Copsy's doing like, he's liaising with the content creators. Oxy's doing like video production and sort of content creator liaison, and Mike is like managing that area. So he's actually in a fairly like well-standing position. It's quite incredible to see these guys like do something interesting with their lives. Yeah. But yeah, they're actually working for Gaijin, but they've picked certain peoples and certain roles that sort of don't really question the core aspects of the game, because like I said to Oxy, I was like, why is the MiG-21F it's like supersonic, but it's one battle rating 9.3, so it's one spot above the MiG-17, but it is like fast as it's got really good low speed handling until a certain point where it just like drops out of the sky. But then like, why is it so low? And he said, well, because the average player struggles to play it. And I thought to myself, like, why are you making the game for the average player? Shouldn't you be making it for the better player? But it seems like Gaijin have their mind sort of set in stone as to where and who they want to target the game to. And I honestly think it's whales.
But you know what?
Like people with loads of cash to just buy the next premium.
It's ironic because I just yesterday I was reading this book called Think and Grow Rich, and I was just going through a paragraph which described the difference of how the person who's in charge of the market today is the customer. Like it was talking about how in the old days, like if you came, let's say, to the gas station, right, to get to pump gas, you would have to wait for the guy to come and to give you the gas. If you went to the grocery store, you'd have to wait. Like the customer wasn't in the forefront, right? You would come to the establishment, but you weren't, treated like a king. You were you're just another person. In fact, you're like, the one who's in demand of my content. You're going to wait. Yes. Right? This is my shop. I'm currently talking to, I don't know, my sister who's in the shop with me because she also owns it. And you're going to wait. And you're going to wait 5 minutes if you have to, right? And this shifted to where the customer is always right. And the customer always has to be, and the customer dictates where things go. And I think this is where, now that I'm older, I can't necessarily say, Gaijin is in the wrong, right? Because then they're
serving their best interests.
Exactly, yeah. But that said, I do think that the way the game had developed could have a lot more potency if it was, if my dream at least was that the primary source of income for the game would be through skins. So similar to the way I think League of Legends does it this way, many games, Fortnite, whatever, so that what you're paying for,
mostly cosmetics.
Yeah, cosmetics. So what you're paying for isn't changing the performance of the in-game stuff. But it was, I think the rate at which we were getting the information through compared to the rate at which things were changing was just so incongruent that I think it was never going to come to fruition. But we tried. So
I see a lot of people like with the same attitude. And Gaijin's I think they're just Soviet in their thinking, where they're just very like it's the leader's way or the highway or the gulag rather. Yeah. But I think that like customer is always right thing is nothing but a facade. At the end of the day, do the companies have the customer as their best interest? Not really. The customer is more a means to an end. I saw this because I used to work at a supermarket here in Australia, one of the big ones, and I used to pack shelves. And at one point, the wages went up, or something else happened where they were like, "Oh, we don't really have the money to put like shelf packers, as many shelf packers on, so we just won't face the shelves. Like we won't like make the store all pretty and neat and organized. We'll just like whatever goes on the shelf goes on the shelf. It doesn't have to be pulled to the front, rotated, nothing." So like you see that, and then you also see like all these larger and larger organizations just like buying up heaps of land and using that for mass farming and just like spraying it with whatever, doesn't give a damn. And they're just like mass producing things for higher profit margins. They don't actually have the customer's best intentions, which is to get a wholesome, like satiating meal. Same goes for fast food as well, but particularly fast food. It's like they have more sugar and salt in them. They just like heart attack on a stick, and then they serve a customer base that is more and more uneducated because they just don't understand or are unable to like motivate themselves to change their ways because of the price and convenience. Like these guys do that, and I think Gaijin does the same. They've realized, hey, we can charge $70 for a reskinned MiG-23 that is premium, and they do. And I've got the stats here from my affiliate link, and because they give you like a little number breakdown. And the last time I checked it, it was like absolutely bonkers. It was just insane. I've got last month's as well, and that was really, really high too. And they were the pre-orders.
So it tells you how many people have purchased it.
With your affiliate link, yeah.
Damn.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the number, but some of them are in the double digits.
And that's just your affiliate link, which means that if you put together all the affiliate links from all the content creators plus all the non-affiliate links, you probably get into the potentially 4-digit numbers, I would assume.
Anton's buying a new super yacht for sure.
Yeah.
Like that, there's a lot of money. The last 2 months have been very, very strong because they just.
But I think it's also kind of scary for Gaijin because I think at the same time they have to create so much content, and even beyond the reskins, they have to. I think the developers must be, so over their heads at the amount of work they have, because we're now in this hype economy, right? Which it's all they have to every month that you got to come up with something new and fancier and shiny, otherwise,
you lose interest because the market is very saturated with games. There are lots and lots of video games you can play. Actually, any individual just needs to go and look at their Steam list and just see the games they've got installed. My Steam list is like 66 games. I don't really play many games very often. But like there are some games that sap my time and without realizing I've put in like triple digit hours in a 2 or 3 week period. Like these games all need to compete, and that's why they've all got a battle pass and daily rewards and all these sorts of things just to sort of keep your attention. And it's kind of sad because it takes away what a good game actually is. And WarThunder just like has a really good balance of mouse aimed arcadiness, but like realistic enough flight models. I say enough because there's currently some hot debate about the F-16 and the MiG-29's flight models. They're like the F-16 has fly-by-wire, and it had in real life like a 9 or 10G or AOA limit or something like that, so that you couldn't like overpull and like pull the plane out of the sky, or also like pull your brains out of your feet. But like this type of stuff, like it's a really good base game, but because of the saturated market, I feel like part of it is that saturated market. They've had to just like throw in so much content just to sort of stay competitive and stay relevant. And it's so sad because there's so much that could be done with this game. There's so much.
That's because I think people might be of the opinion that I sort of hate WarThunder or think that it's somehow inferior. I think it was one of the greatest games of all time because what they
is
had
it like a disappointed father almost? Because sometimes I feel that way with WarThunder.
I think it's just the case of unfulfilled potential. It's where you see the potential in something or someone. And I think the core place where it failed for me was that it failed on Twitch, for example. It never got the recognition. Even nowadays, when the official channel streams, they don't pull the viewers you'd expect. And I hate talking about numbers, but I think an official WarThunder stream, if WarThunder was a game that it could have become, it should be, in the 5 digits. And it had the potential to be an esports success. And what was so brilliant about WarThunder, and it goes unnoticed, is that the average online game today teaches you nothing. But WarThunder is based off of history. So you are actually teaching people something about history. And yet, the irony, I think, is that what I consider the very core of the game. You remember the pop-up, invite link for friends?
Oh, yeah.
I'd be willing to
bet
that. They reduced it? Like the appearance?
They reduced... No, the amount that you get. So there's... I think they made the Golden Eagles amount... Yeah, but I have a feeling that's also because they added, like, they've got rank 8 now. So, like, to get to rank 5, it's not really that hard.
Oh, that's right.
You remember how you used to have to grind for a week and then you could finally go from, like, your MiG 9 to your MiG 15 non-bis or something like that. It's now like, so when the Swedish tree came out, I took the J35D. I got, how far up did I get? Oh, no, it wasn't. It was the J29D. It was like uh, it's very similar to the MiG 15. It's got good energy
So what,
retention.
like a tier 6 premium, I would assume.
It was rank 5.
Okay.
Because it's basically like a bit slower than a MiG 15 non-bis. It pulls like a hunter below 800. Um, but it's got Aidens and it's got really decent energy retention. So it was kind of cool. It was like a hybrid of all of the jets. It was just really interesting to fly. But it was tough. It wasn't easy to fly. Um, but I managed in 5 hours to get to rank 5.
Jesus, 5
I
hours.
think I streamed it. And this is a tree that you had to like grind all the way through every last piece. So like you couldn't just go up one line or two lines
Hmm.
and call it a day. You had to like get everything. It's really not as hard as it used to be to get to rank 5. So um, that being said, it's a shame they nerfed the rewards because they've consistently tried to do it, and it's like there's an active desire to
Hmm.
make it harder for people, and the people that are already there will just sort of get fed up with it,
Well,
and
because
it
the way I
sucks because
feel it is it's completely discouraging people from even attempting the whole free to play aspect, or I guess
yeah, it
grinding the
encourages them to
whole,
pay.
and it loses that the thing which we had, which was biplanes in arcade, and
Hmm.
because those are still also my favorite, video memories from Mighty Jingles, Fly, Antac, um, but also I don't know if you remember, there's a thing called, I think it's a historical campaign, which
Yeah,
was part of the. So back in the day, there were like 5 or 6 packs you could buy. It was like one
yeah,
for each
they're still
nation.
there.
Yeah, but it was like one for each nation, and one that was
Mm,
a combination of them all. And it
yeah,
included, among other things, I think it was the A6M2, so the co-horizon that you get
yeah.
with the
It might be
Americans.
the 6M5 Otsu, I think.
Well,
It was a later zero. It's like an insanely good SL grinder.
yeah. So basically,
Mm,
you got a Japanese plane and an American plane, some other
yeah.
stuff, and the historical campaign, which was,
Mm.
well, it was pretty crappy back then. I would assume it's still crappy
It's
today because they haven't changed it. But it
it's
was,
very lame.
but
Yeah.
it was made to sort of supposedly teach you how, I don't
Hmm.
know, attack on Pearl Harbor went,
Yeah.
and that was something that, back then I was thinking, maybe naively so, that the future of the game would also create some sort of a game mode where, one team would be defending Pearl Harbor and one team would be attacking Pearl Harbor, and it would be like a recreation of
Yeah.
that. Maybe I even thought Sim would be because when I think simulator, I don't just think that you need a joystick and it's all like,
Hmm.
realistic, but in the sense that it's also simulating the history.
A
And
real conflict.
and we never got that. I think that would have been a
Mm.
wonderful, wonderful way to.
Yeah. We like kind of got that with World War mode, but World War mode was like basically you had a tactical map and you have your two or three squadron commanders or two commanders and a leader or something like that. And all of them are capable of moving like these individual chess pieces around a map. And then when the red and the blue collide, you basically get a match and it plays out like a normal WarThunder match on a normal WarThunder map. But there are like very specific objectives. It's okay, but you need a squadron and like back in the day, basically like all the old like think. You remember Revi,
Hmm.
um, like Eurus, all these old guys just like jumped onto TeamSpeak, and there were like 30 of us in this one squadron. Um, on rotation, by the way. So like if someone got out, someone would come back in. And we just like played the shit out of it for about 20 hours. Like from when it started until it stopped. There was always someone online and there were always lobbies being filled. And that was the only way to play it because it was just tough to get into. Whereas like an EC that you just drop in and drop out of would be just perfect. It would just be so good. But unfortunately, like Gaijin have developed it very slowly, but it's just I don't know. There are too many pieces of the puzzle missing for it to be a full thing. It's it's just just wasted potential again.
Hmm. But that's one of the problems of how they've done development always, is it almost feels like when the thing gets released, that's when the beta testing actually happens. And
Yeah,
because you're beta testing with live players, because you have to assume that the average player is an absolute moron, he's the guy
yeah.
who's going to be giving you feedback, and he's also the guy they're basing the numbers off. The numbers, which you've
Hmm.
mentioned, is what they use to balance vehicles. And that's,
Yeah,
it also, it's, I said this before, one of the fundamental flaws that WarThunder has is that they keep changing values of, let's say, a gun. Because look, if you're going to build a realistic game, then a 50 cal is a 50 cal. And so 50
yes,
cal damage today, 50 cal in 5 years from now and 5 years before should have the same damage output. And that means that
yeah.
it's also, at least in my mind, maybe I'm not thinking straight, but that should be easier for the developer because they only have to set the value once and then leave it, never touch it again.
Well, they've kind of standardized it now. Basically, they use a formula instead of going off penetration values on a spreadsheet or like on an old data sheet.
Hmm.
They actually found that like the Russians and the Americans had different definitions of a shell penetration. I can't remember exactly what they are, but at the end of the day, this affected the values of the shell penetration. Um, what they did was they used this like Demar formula or something like that, where they like take the like original kinetic energy like as soon as the gunpowder is ignited or something like that, and then as soon as it leaves the barrel, or I can't quite remember the specifics, but they standardized it, and it's actually like for once they are like not doing that as often as they used to. It's so good because like you're right. A 50 cal wasn't always a 50 cal. Some days it was a 20 mil, and some days it was a 303.
Yeah.
And now it actually feels like it's got some punch to it. Um, they are still like doing things with missiles that are a little strange. Like some of the missiles are they come to the game a little bit weaker or a little bit funny, or they might have a bug or two. But then they eventually strengthen them over time. That's one thing that they do that's a bit weird. But otherwise, like the game has improved in some respects in the quality area. And I think that like it's so slow. It's just how can they like forward the game if it's going at a snail's pace? Pardon to use the pun, but like is that one of the things that
It's
drove you
quite
away
ironic
from the
with
game?
the poster in your background as well.
Yeah, so fun fact about this poster, you can see like these little white bits here. They're signatures of the lead devs. All these little things here. It's
Yeah.
so cool. Like it's yeah, they sold 100 of them. Or was it 100 or 1,000? I think it was 1,000, but I can't remember. I managed to get like one of the first ones because I sat on refresh for an hour and a half because the store had an error. It was like this the store's going live at this time, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I've got to get up for work. I've got to get up for work. I can't stay awake for this much longer. And then I sent one of the store guys a message. I'm like, is there an issue with this? Like I can't refresh it. And yeah, they were working on an issue. So I did stay up a copiously long time to get this poster, but it's a reminder of like everything, absolutely everything that's happened in the past like 7 or 8 years of playing War Thunder. Like all the people I've met, all the things I've done, all the like great events and kills and losses, and like there was one weekend where I sat in and participated with like Fly and like Scottish Koala and maybe Smin, and a few others. We were like there were 60 of us in a team speak, like content creators, players, everyone, doing this like Battle of Britain or like bombing raid event where we would like go up in B-17s. Um, oh yeah, it must have been like a like bombing raid type thing. And the enemies had like BF-109s and Fokker Wolves, and I think there was some 163s and things like that. It was so cool. It was just like all these memories, and it's just encapsulated by this. And that's why I bought it. That's why it's special. Have you have you got any memories of that? Like you saw anything tangible or anything like
I
I don't
mean,
know.
to be honest, it's everything from the headphones to the microphone, right? Because I would have never been able to afford all of that if it wasn't for for the game and making the content.
Oh yeah.
But I think the biggest one, which I didn't realize was so important to me until I was looking for a new job, was looking for where I want to take my life, and that's my voice, because this voice wouldn't exist if it wasn't for WarThunder. Weird as it might sound, it's just that's why I hope I'll never delete that video, right? Which is the A26 Invader, because it's ridiculous to see just how much progress was made. Since then.
You cringe a little bit, don't you?
Absolutely, but I also think, wow, that's me. You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, in fact, right now, I'm actually working on a project on my own. I want to create an online course which would teach people in 4 different levels, from a beginner to a master, how to better their English pronunciation. Because I went through the internet and I scoured for all the different online courses, and you can find there's stuff for free everywhere, but it's so just mixed up, and like an hour and a half long video of just a person saying cat 50 times over so that you hear the sound.
Oh God.
And what I realized was that pretty much all these videos were made by native speakers. So you'd have a person who was born and raised in England explaining to you the theory, right? The IPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet, which shows all I call them hieroglyphs. And my thought process was the following, right? I asked myself the question, okay, so let's say I wanted to, as a Slovenian person, born and raised in Slovenia, if I wanted to teach, if I was foreign and I came to Slovenia and I wanted to learn Slovene, I too would seek a native, right? Because it's the logical thing to do. You find somebody who speaks that language and you let them teach you. But if I'm in India, for example, and I'm looking at a course from a British person, I am trying to attain something that is really impossible, because unless I'm going to move to England or have truly long conversations, like if I had a conversation like this with a British person for hours on hours every single day for several years, then perhaps it's possible. But I think it's foolish to assume that you could reach that level without actually going and living in that country and being surrounded by the language and being forced to use it. So the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm not from England. In fact, I've never been there, right? Never been to England. And I kept getting people saying, oh, are you British? I'm like, no, I've actually never been there.
Either that or the Ratatouille guy.
Yes, that or the Ratatouille guy. Oh, my God. And I thought, I represent the fact that it can be done, that it is something that is attainable. And I also want to present some concepts which I have used over the course of creating YouTube videos that maybe are a little bit weird. And I can tell you one of them. I would make words up, because when you're speaking in a language that you're learning, often you'll stop and you'll try to find the right word. And in the meantime, what you tend to do is you tend to fill that gap, that void, with fillers. So you go, and so not just that it's horrible for the listener because you're giving him all those fillers. What's happening is that you're using those fillers progressively more, and they become part of your subconsciousness. And so the more you use the fillers, the more you're going to use them further and further and further, because you're used to using those base words. In fact, one really simple thing people can do is they can go into Chat GPT and they can give it a text and say, give me a word frequency analysis. And it will tell you how many times which word appears. And you'll find that on most texts, the average words that appear the most are the, and, a, on, right? And if you don't know how to pronounce those words correctly, then you're already in a detriment. And then I looked at the school
because
system.
it's basic conversation. Hey,
yeah, I mean,
it's like you master the basics.
Yeah,
and then move on to the bigger things.
And I think it helps to learn pronunciation as you progress your English. But when I looked at schools, the biggest portion I think was always grammar. It was like just the rules, which is you're studying the theory. It's often quite boring. especially for languages like German. It's just, I want to shoot myself in the head doing that. And
There are genders to words
Mhm.
that don't have any sense.
Yeah.
I love it. I won't even try and learn German because of that. I just don't care enough.
It's horrendous.
The barrier is too high for entry.
Yeah. And the grammar, I think, shows most in writing, also in speech and everything, obviously, because it is grammar, it is a fundamental, but it's mostly shown in writing. And then they give you all these different comprehensions. But I think there's not enough of focus on reading, listening, and most importantly, speaking. You may have presentations. They will tell you to go in groups and have a dialogue and all that. But the sheer amount of effort that's ever put onto pronunciation in schools is almost zero. And that's coming from a person who went to university to study English. And I came there and I realized, holy crap, they're putting almost no effort on correct pronunciation. They would just whiff out the big notebook, which is the knowledge, right? All the information. And like, you go and you learn Buster. And I still
regurgitate.
Yeah, exactly. And I still have friends who have completed the study. So 4 years of English. They've got the thesis or whatever, the diploma, the bachelor's degree, right? And we'll have a conversation and they'll say, yeah, it was my birthday. I'm like,
oh no.
It was your what? Excuse me? It was your what? It was my birthday. I'm like, fuck me.
Oh dear.
And I know that it's a little thing. And I know that most people don't hear it or it doesn't bother them. But I think that's where the complacency for that language starts. Because if you can't say birthday, if you can't produce the sound th, then it's going to start. Then what was the point of going through all those studies? Why did you learn all that?
Well, English
theory?
used to have that as an actual letter. Like it used to look like a cursive Y, which is why you see ye olde pub. It's actually the old pub, but I think it's called like a than or something like that. I can't remember. But like, pronunciation makes the difference. Like when I was a kid, like mum and dad used to take me to church, and you'd get these people that like maybe I think they grew up in the Philippines. They're like used to speaking Tagalog, and then they come up and they try and read a passage of like a very old text with very specific English words, and it just sounds jarring. It's tough to listen to, and it's tough to take away that message that might be in the text because they just can't get the pronunciation. So it sounds like what you're doing is like really, really new and dynamic. But like, how would you market something like that? Because marketing is like the big thing.
It's
like,
a really good
how do you get
question.
noticed on YouTube?
Well, to start things off, the first thing I've done is I've broken down the courses into 4 segments. And at the moment, the concept is, because I'm still working on it and it is a work in progress. And the reason why I feel comfortable talking about it is precisely because I think it's intellectual property that nobody can really steal, because it's mine, it's me, right? They can steal the theory, but they can't steal my concepts because they're in my head. And that's why I've felt comfortable talking to people on. Hell, I've spoken to women on dates. I've discussed this business idea with others because I know that they can't just steal it.
And they can't really steal your personal twist to it, because you've got a very specific personality type and like very specific way of doing things and working through things. And I've like just noticed that over the years, and it's too hard to replicate. Like even I've given it a go in my content, because my content is essentially inspired by your YouTube content. Just like take the footage, walk through it, talk about how it is, and then in the downtime, like discuss something relevant that might be interesting.
I think there's a certain amount of arrogance you require, which I know can sometimes be a really bad thing, but I also notice that we're always in the market of selling things. And I realized that
it's confidence.
Yeah, and I realized I would make for a pretty convincing salesman. The idea that you can just, because let's say this is another reason why I want to do this is because teaching people how to better pronounce stuff. I don't want everybody to speak British English, because they won't. But it's about enticing this confidence that then shows in all languages across, that your speech, your body language, all that speaks, and it speaks volumes in when you go for a job interview, when you're on a date with a girl, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of that culminates because I've started doing it and paying more attention to it for the past 6 or so months, and I've noticed improvements across the board. And people behave and react differently when you're able to, you know, when you have certain words you can use that are a bit more, you know, vivid, or they paint a certain image. Because why do
They have
you?
more gravitas.
That's a really great word.
They actually like command authority because
Yes.
they like, oh, someone with lots of knowledge is talking. I better listen.
Yes. Because, you know, if you're in school and you have presentations, you'll find there's one guy that's just natural. They just sort of,
Yeah.
they don't really care. You know, they just go up there and they do the presentation, and it's good. You have the guy
that was
who
me.
will read the entire thing, and it's not necessarily bad, but it's definitely not as
Yeah.
engaging. And then you have people who just, they're half reading, there's a lot of filler words, they're just lost, and those people won't make it far in life, not because life is like giving a presentation, but because they're gonna struggle to sell themselves. If you do that same thing in a job interview, you know, like the interviewer is going to say, well, okay, so why do you want this job? Actually, yeah, you're out the door. They don't.
Yeah.
It's not like if a girl asks you, know, why, like, what do you do in life? Oh, actually, you gotta.
Yeah. Well, if you can't sell yourself, how are you going to? Sorry, if you can't have confidence in yourself, how is like a girlfriend going to have confidence in you?
Exactly.
How is an employer going to have confidence in you? And like, how are your friends going to have confidence in you if you don't have confidence in yourself? And like, you need to like, confidence is tough, man. Like, I am still not a confident person despite having this ability to talk. I feel like sometimes I talk too much, and I need to like restrain myself and only talk selectively. But that's a whole separate issue. The ability to like engage in something in a way that is reciprocal, like your conversation mate is able to reciprocate that conversation and sort of keep it going and build a connection. That's how you get places in life, because that's how you develop an emotional connection to someone, and people really do think emotionally. That impression that you make on someone by having good pronunciation would surely bring you a lot more than if you didn't have it. But like, is this course like, how's it going to be accessible? I suppose online, right?
Yeah, I'm currently working on setting it through a particular website, which unfortunately is quite costly by a month-to-month basis, but it offers everything in one place. There's also an app for it. You know, I didn't want to bother with having one platform that I'm paying for the website, another one for the store, another one for this, because it's too complicated. So at the moment, the goal is just to get 1 or 2 courses created, so I have a visual and they cover the monthly costs. Marketing, I'll talk in a second, but I just wanted to run you through the idea that I've had building 4 levels, starting with level 0, which is the beginner level, where I would go over the theory, because you still have to understand vowels, consonants, syllables.
Oh yeah.
People have to understand that there is that theory, but that it is ultimately not the only way to look at a language. That you know, time spent speaking and developing, and a couple of tricks maybe they can use, they will perpetuate them forward. In level 1, which is the intermediate level, I want to create a course that's entirely based around vocabulary. I want to focus on taking excerpts from good books that they can then read, which is also interesting homework. It's not just here's a page of shit you can fill out, but rather read, find the words that you don't understand, write them down, look up their meaning, look up their pronunciation, then we'll go through them all together. I want to introduce culture. I want to introduce these people to, good movies, maybe speeches from movies. There was I don't know if you watched it, The Menu came out just a couple of months ago. And it has Ralph Fiennes doing this wonderful bit of talking about...
He's a very good speaker.
And it's like when you look at that person, and obviously he's acting, but you could also argue that you're acting throughout life, right? Because if you're on the stage and you're creating some of a presentation, you're also acting.
Yeah.
And
Well, there's a like slightly different personality for every place that you're in, right? But again, like on the flip side of that, the actors also inject a bit of themselves into the characters, which is why you see people like I can't remember who it was, but someone was rejected for the role of Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings, and they put Viggo Mortensen in instead. And like this guy's a nobody. Like what's he started before? Nothing.
yeah,
Nothing that I know of for sure. But like he's the perfect person for this role because he just fits it. His personality, like there's a picture of him in his like caravan, and Bill the horse that is on set with them is like eating from like either from his bowl of cereal or like at the table next to him in the caravan. Like he's just a wild man. He is as Aragorn is, and it just fits very very perfectly. The same would go with I think it's Ralph Fiennes.
actually, I don't know how to pronounce that part, but yeah, yeah,
He's a he plays Voldemort. He
yeah.
plays there's a in the Wallace and Gromit movie. He plays the antagonist there. The guy who's trying to get the lady. I can't remember
Yeah.
much of it anymore, but like he's such a good and like it's a very specific flavor. Actually, it's funny. I'll relate it to cooking. It's like a spice, right?
Yes.
You use
Yes.
it's like chili and turmeric and paprika all create slightly like that's like spice, right? But each of them is like so subtly different. And you've just got to pick the right one, isn't it? It's just that way.
And that's
right?
also what I want to implement is for people to understand that an accent requires, if you really want to go down that route, it requires a character, you know. And
Yes, it
that's
does.
why it helped
Absolutely.
me that I was theOrangeDoom, because it moved me away from who I am in real life and the way that I speak English, which is that your normal accent, your in this case Slovenian accent, would sort of penetrate into the English. And this way I was able to just make a wall. And after several years of practice, I now actually struggle to go backwards. I actually have to really think, because I was doing some test recordings and I was trying to get people to understand what I used to sound like. And I was actually struggling to replicate that sound.
Jeez.
But yeah,
You almost have to like put on an accent, right?
I basically have to fake it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Although
That's the way, like-
if I am hanging out with Slovenian friends and I'm talking in Slovenian for a long time and then I try to say something in English, it usually it gets penetrated through. It is a little bit skewered. But you notice that if you wanted to like change to 3-4 different languages one after another, very difficult.
Yeah, it's tough. Your brain needs to adjust, right? It's kind of like there are some people. There's a really really old video of an Aussie comedian who's like putting on different hats, and with each hat he has a different accent. But I found that like if you imitate a character that you know, you end up being able to emulate the accent a lot better. There's an old British TV show where it had heaps of different characters from heaps of different backgrounds. And I used to try and imitate each one by sort of imitating their mannerisms, imitating everything. And it worked. It was great. Like I could almost on command switch to certain accents. And it was crazy. It was just insane. Like, and now you can, like, I can kind of do it. But it's crazy. When you put on that character, you are just, you're right. You're able to put up a wall. And then when that wall has served its purpose, you tear it down and you just go and enjoy your life speaking English as normal.
I think it's also a dance. One of the things I'm going to cover is how, let's say Italian, right?
Yeah.
To speak Italian, one of the basic things you can do is you do the hand gesture and you go bibidi babidi bibidi bubidi. As you speak the English this way, it automatically comes out as way more Italian. And I know that it's exaggerated, but that's exactly what you want. You want to learn a language.
You put the character on.
Yeah, you put a character on. And German, for example, is very like, it's like bam 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 bam,
Shake your fist.
And even if you don't even say words that exist in German, if I just just random words, it sounds way more German. And if you can encapsulate that in a language, and if you can catch that, so you have to. It's like a dance almost. I I say this and it's a little bit offensive maybe, but try to imitate Adolf Hitler whilst dancing through the room like a clown. It's impossible.
You know what? You give the example of Adolf Hitler, but he's actually a really good speaker.
Absolutely.
Like have you listened to his speeches? They're so inspiring, and I don't even know a word of German.
I mean, there's a reason why he, got as far as he did. One of the reasons was that he was a tremendous speaker.
Yeah, so, and then you listen to Winston Churchill, and Churchill's a good speaker, but he's got a lisp, and I was like, oh my god, this is hard to listen to. He's very tough to listen to, but when he doesn't have that lisp, it is just so staunch and so like defiant, and it's like just incredible just to hear him say words because he's just like there's a reason why it's become iconic. There's another good speech that JFK gave at the Berlin Wall. I can't remember what year. I think it was in the 50s. But he invokes the Roman Empire, and he invokes like all these crazy like big things. He's like 2,000 years ago, the proudest boast was like, I am Roman, but in Latin. And then he goes, today the proudest boast is Ich bin ein Berliner. Yeah. And he said it with an American-ish accent because he's like yelling and shouting, but like he's just so eloquent in that delivery. And imagine, well, you think about the way that all the little kids learn English in parts of Europe. They learn it through cartoons, through characters, and they must imitate that. They must pick that up, because I remember being a little kid and like putting on this character and putting on that character. It must make it so much easier. And I think it's funny. You've found a niche. You found a really cool niche. I'm excited to see it exploited.
Well, I have to say it is very saturated in terms of how much content is already available, right? But as we're talking about speeches now, that was level 2. So the third level is all about public speaking. Because I had in high school, I joined a rhetoric class, and I realized that wow, this is huge. Your ability to stand on stage and present something, and then that came useful later in 2021. We had this. I was basically organizing a competition. I was a moderator for a competition, and I had to stand in front of a camera and I had to talk. And it wasn't just that YouTube gave me the confidence. It was also that you have to command presence, because on YouTube here, I'm sitting in a chair, I can recline myself all the way backwards, but there I'm in a suit and tie. I am standing, shoulders, up, neck, you have to sort of have this control. And then when you come close to the camera and further away, and as you're moving, the gestures of your hands, everything tells a story. And
did you have to speak with a script, or did you not have a script
in the competition?
No, just with moderating the competition.
I did make myself a script in terms of to have like an overview, because what I had to do is I had to call all the competitors. It was a live bartending competition. It was a very difficult thing to organize. It was like I think it was two months of just I was so stressed out. I got an acne outbreak because I was just
stressed.
I was really stressed. But I was doing everything. I was organizing, moderating, writing emails. I had a team of 27 students helping out, but it was at the end of the day, when you want something done, you tend to do it yourself. So
it's pretty big. It's a huge thing to do. Like I watched FFG Connor basically like run like broadcasting. So maybe 2019 actually. I saw a video from Tech, the European Canadian. He's like, WarThunder will never be in esports. Get over it. And I was like, we'll see about that. I went to TeamSpeak and I was like, I'm not happy with this. And then Connor and Thunderpants were like, come on, let's start one up then. And so we basically started this broadcasting group, and it like pulls, we get Gaijin to run Twitch drops. We like do all this stuff with it. It's so good. There are esports ready skins. Like the brand is called Esports Ready. So it's a little bit of a jab, but like it's such a big thing to organize. And I've seen FFG in the background, like doing all of this stuff, gathering all the casters, and like doing so much of the work himself. It is a huge amount of work, and just I'm surprised. Like it must be character building, surely.
It is. It's also paying dividends now, because actually just doing this course is insanely difficult and challenging, because on one hand, you're setting up a website, and even though the program I'm using allows it to be quite simple, it's like building blocks, there's still so much that comes into it. So many different pages that need information, and then what information to give them. What is, how long do you make these? How engaging do you make this? Record everything, edit everything, put captions on all the stuff, right? What type of information do you show on screen? What type of homework, right? Do you give them downloadable content? All these questions have to be answered, and it's going to be a hit or miss, in the sense that I'm going to have to probably correct some of it later down the line. But I'm most excited about this level 2 one, which is the whole speaking part, because I think it really goes across the whole board. And I feel the way I've structured it is, again, they start with that level 0, they get some of the idea at how they can fix or improve it through daily exercises. Then they start getting the vocabulary. So they get those big, like gravitas, which you use, right? Because those words, you can sometimes pause and then give them that word, and that word will speak volumes, And then they get to the point.
It gives them something to chew on.
And then because most English courses, I think they go too far into the, let me teach you what it is like to be British, right? This is a cup of tea, and these are all the idioms that we use. No. And it's like, I get it, but you're literally teaching a person how to be British whilst you're British, and the only way he's ever going to become British is if he moves to England and lives there for the rest of his life. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense, because you're going to have a person in, Kazakhstan, he's going to come and do an English course, then he's going to come to his mates, and he's going to be like, yeah, hey, governor, let's go to the pub and have me, it doesn't sell. It's not, it just does not make sense.
I want to know I want to know what, like, shisha and, like, all the, like, what's coffee, like, all these sorts of things, like common things. I don't want to know what it's like to be British. I want to know what it's like to be, I don't know, a Kazakh in the world, but just in an English way. Like, I think there's a lot to be said for the way that you're approaching it. I think it's really cool. It's like, the narrowness that most people approach it, I think it stems from the university way of doing things. Like, here's the lecture, go and learn it and regurgitate it 3 months later in an exam. Whereas you're actually teaching them the fundamentals. You're teaching them how to expand on that themselves eventually, and then you're teaching them how to, like, go out in the world and be a normal human being.
I mean, what I realized was, and it was a wonderful explanation of it, is schools give you knowledge, they give you information. What I'm offering is a transformation.
Yes.
Because you can get information for free, right? And I think I also will emphasize that the course I'm offering it's not something they're going to, get a certificate from. They're not going to be acknowledged by university as not some type of, I completed this thing online for the IECTS or whatever those boring abbreviations are. You're not going to put this on your CV. It's the success or failure of this course will be entirely shown by the individual, whether he's able to utilize what I'm trying to teach them and improve. And I'm convinced that anybody who puts down at least, a certain degree of effort will see improvements, because if it worked for me, I know it can work for others, purely because I'm not British, because I haven't been born there.
Yeah.
I'm still torn on the level 3. I'm torn on that last step, which I've left open as an idea to maybe show them, maybe go into the business realm of things. Is it something that you could sell almost to, let's say you have a big company, and this company has, because you've probably seen these presentations from, and I'm not talking like Apple, Microsoft, they've done relatively good of these presentations, but they still manage to, even in big companies, successful companies, with, these people, they make a ridiculous wage, they're very successful, they're very intelligent, but when it comes to their presentation skills, it's pretty bad. And they don't seem to be able to get the point across. And I also noticed that when I was working for people, a lot of the bosses I had or the people up above, they didn't have the best of communicative skills, and it leads to a lot of conflict in the team because nobody really knows what they should be doing. They're often misunderstood, and I think there is some maybe niche market there that could be expanded. But I'm leaving that sort of an extra option,
right?
Extra option, yeah. And then I also thought about developing shorter courses for like, I don't know, you want to speak like Borat, or with a Scottish accent or an Australian accent. Obviously, I still have to actually teach myself those because I haven't mastered the majority of it, But that's voice acting, and again, it's something I'm leaving as a opportunity. But I want to have, I want to have a website which. Actually, no, I should say I will have a website. That's another aspect that I've changed in my life. Is I no longer look at things in the hopeful way, but I look at things and I'm going to do them. Right? It's going to be done. It's visualizing that which you want rather than hoping that it will be made and hoping it will succeed. And because that thought process is
thinking is believing.
Yeah.
There's a study that actually it's covered by Vsauce. It was one of his in one of his like long content episodes. It was really, really interesting. They took some kids with behavioral issues, put them in a decommissioned MRI, and said that this machine is a medical device that helps fix your problems, because these kids were like, yeah, I'm a bit naughty, like, I don't know, like I scratch my sores and things like that. And they took the kids into this MRI, like put them in the machine, and then like, I don't know, pretended to make sounds for like 20 minutes, and then took them out, and then they actually saw an improvement in their behavior.
So
it's a matter of
they didn't actually turn it on. Or
no. There's the magnet's deactivated.
Okay. No, because I know that the MRI, I've been there once. It makes a shitload of noise. I mean, it's it's an experience.
It wouldn't have been as loud because like I work with MRI. Like I don't do the MRIs, but I help out there every now and then. And if you've ever been in the magnet itself, like I've got a retainer on the bottom of my teeth, like on the bottom front, to keep them straight, and it's made of, I'm not really sure what metal, but at the end of the day, there's some physics behind it that means that if you are very close to the magnet, you'll find that it like draws you in a little bit. Even just that, I'm pretty sure it must be ferrous, but it's like just this tiny, tiny little stretch of wire, and it draws you in. But at the back of the magnet, you also get dizzy because it just messes with you so much. It's a really, really powerful machine. But like, they tried the same thing with adults, and of course they like, oh, make sure you remove all your jewelry and all this sort of thing, and change into this patient gown, and then they played the sounds because people know that an MRI is loud, so they pretended it was a proper functioning MRI, and they actually saw the same. They saw, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was confidence or intelligence or something like that, but like they improved, and it's just that power of suggestion, right? Like for me, I go one step further and I talk to someone about it. I say, I want to do this, or I am going to do this. And then when I do that, I've kind of created myself a social expectation that I will do said thing. And it's allowed me to just be a little bit more, less of a, what we call colloquially a gunner. Gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. So they call them a gunner. And you end up being less of a gunner, and you end up being more of a doer, and that actually works really well. It's so interesting to see it play out, because you just find a strategy that works for you, but you've got to make sure you execute it, because again, like, how else do you get to 50,000 YouTube subscribers? How else do you get to certain milestones? How else do you finish degrees, courses, whatnot? It's like that motivation, that execution is what needs to happen. Otherwise you find that you fall behind, and that you like just end up going through the motions and being pathetically average.
There's a beautiful quote. I'm including it in one of the videos that will be coming out this year, but it's, if you take average advice from average people living average lives, can you expect to be anything other than average? and
That's
it's been stuck with me ever since, because it's so true, you know. And
you are the
I've
company you keep, right?
yeah, and they also, you know, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most, and people struggle with that one because it's
Yes.
like, I think people don't realize these people don't have to be physically present. Like, you're in Australia, I'm in Slovenia, right?
Yeah.
I can't really surround myself with you, but I can,
You
because we're
you
just
can
doing that right
yeah.
now, right? So
Yeah.
the common misconception is that these people have to be present, like, and then you see people will write, well, oh, but you know, where do I find good quality friends? Where do I find this? It's like, well, first of all, you're gonna have to go get out, right? Do your hobbies that you enjoy, and you'll
Put
because
yourself
like
out there. Yeah.
because when I was cycling, I met a whole bunch of interesting people. Guess what? They were also cycling, right? But you're not limited to it. If you're in a point of life right now where you feel like you're surrounded by, I guess, low quality individuals, or the people that are not inspiring you to make
Yeah.
your life better, then podcasts, there's, if you're going to spend, you know, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I asked him, because he's always on TikTok, and I said, how many hours did you spend on TikTok last week? And he said 15. 15 hours in 1 week.
Yeah.
And I thought, imagine, you know, if for 15 hours you were listening to, you know, a particular YouTuber, let's say. You know, it doesn't have to be Andrew Tate, right? But
Yeah.
but you can listen to, there's a bunch of these, I think Andrew Huberman
Just
comes to
like-
mind, you know, where he's like a high up in the medical field, knows, or like, you know,
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson for sociological stuff. You can
Yeah.
always, if you find 5, or let's say just 3 really smart people in their own respective fields, right? One to cover finances, one to cover health, and one to cover love aspect of life, and you surround yourself with those 3 podcasts or content types. It could also be a book at the end of the day. I mean, what I noticed was that when I was streaming, I used to watch a lot of Boaty. Boaty is pretty much the biggest RuneScape streamer of all time. And if you listen to him, you'll notice that I would sound a lot like him, because I was watching him so much, I would start to subconsciously imitate him.
You do. You emulate the people you surround.
Yeah. You know, I was watching this Slovenian podcast, these 3 guys talking, and I was busy I would be like working out for 2 hours, and I would be listening to that podcast. And I probably consumed like a solid 5, 6, 7 hours of it. Then I went to hang out at a friend's place, and the minute I opened my mouth, I sounded exactly like them. And I was like, whoa! First I was in shock, but then I realized, holy shit, this works, right? And so there's no limit. But if you're gonna surround yourself with 15 hours of TikTok, then you're getting no value out of it, because it's short form and it's always changing, and
especially if it's like uninformative or drama or degenerative, or just like, if you spend 15 hours a week watching Thought Talk, then I honestly have no hope for you.
yes, basically.
That's a pretty deep hole to climb out of, man. But like, you spend your time around like productive people. You'll want to imitate them, like that monkey see, monkey do, and you'll want to try and forward yourself. Like I'm having a chat with one of my mates at work, and he's very emotionally in tune with people. He's a very good active listener, and I've noted, like, he sort of talked me through a bit of it, and I'm like, well, shit, I'm a bit of a rubbish active listener. Maybe I should try some of these strategies. And lo and behold, I am now becoming a reflection of the 5 people I hang around the most, because those sort of 5 people are ever changing. And this is something that like will probably stick with me for a long time if I keep it up. And it's a great way to improve yourself.
Yeah.
Just by like, hey, this guy's doing something that works really well. Maybe I should give it a go. Maybe I should, imitate this or improve on it, or, know that this is not the right thing for me to do long term. So I should run away and get out of it while I can. That improvement is just so crucial, because in improvement you also like find meaning. Like, you find meaning in the people around you.
Yep.
And if you don't like the people around you, and you find new people, like you get like a double dopamine hit by just like finding people that are really good and that you click with. Like, when you go from, if any of you with like uni jobs go on to like working in your workplace, and you go from like somewhere where everyone's like really poor at making life choices, to somewhere where everyone's like talking about investments and like all these interesting things or things that are like forwarding their life. You find that you're actually a bit better mentally. You just like, it's just less of a drag. Instead of people coming to you every day, oh, I've had to take out like Afterpay to pay for my kids' PlayStation 5 for Christmas. Everyone's talking about stuff like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put like 10 grand into this crypto and like 5 grand into shares, and the market's sort of slated to go up, and all this sort of stuff. But like, you just surround yourself with these intelligent people, and you'll absorb some of that, and you'll just become a lot more just a lot better. You just become a better human, because you just find that you end up just in a better place. Like, frank and simple, you're just with better people. They're just doing more things with their life, and you'll just find that you'll monkey see, monkey do, and end up in the same spot.
And generally, you don't want to ever be the smartest person in the room, ever. I mean, it's a great
There's
feeling.
a great quote. There's a great quote that says, "If you are the smartest in the room, then you're in the wrong room."
Yeah.
Yeah. So at work, we've got lots of doctors, right? Obviously, it's a hospital. I will like finish up an X-ray, and I'll go sign it off, go up to the doctor, and I'll be like, "Hey, what do you think? Like, is there a pathology like broken bone or something there? Um, you know, what about this part of the X-ray? What about that part?" And I'll have this discussion, and like at the end, I feel glad that I went up to this doctor and like asked them, like wasted their 30 seconds to like find out, hey, does this patient actually have something? Because that has a double benefit. In my case, it's got a double benefit. You learn something new potentially, and you also are able to like modify the way that you do things for the future. But I suppose this could be also float on to literally anything. It'll be like, I don't know, maybe you're like you're working in a kitchen and you're just doing something like preparing vegetables, or you're preparing part of a dish, and the chef prefers to, or like you go up to the chef and you go like, what do you think?
Yeah.
And he goes, nah, prepare them slightly differently. Like, I don't know, bigger, cut the meat bigger or finer or whatever, because that way you get this, that, and the other. And you go, like, okay, just modify your technique for next time. And at the end of the day, you create a better and easier life for yourself, because you've just made your workflow easier and you've made yourself smarter. So it's so good to just be in the presence of intelligent people, because by adjusting yourself over and over again, you just become that little bit smarter, and you just become that little bit better at what you do, and that reflects on you. That also gives you confidence, and it's all tied into everything. It's like everything is related here, like confidence, knowledge, work, especially for men. It's very much so. You have it all together, and when you got it all together, you've really got it all together. And it's nice to have it that way. So if you can get the snowball started, then it just rolls, and it's only a matter of time.
You mentioned the kitchen. It was, because I have to say it was yes and no. As in, on one hand, I was surrounded by people who were extremely talented cooks, extremely talented. You know, there was one kid, I think he's 20 now, so 5 years younger than me, and he's got, there's no chance in hell I could ever be better than him in cooking, ever.
Oh yeah.
He's just
a natural ability.
He's natural. You can see that he oozes the confidence and the love for food, and he's got the theory mastered. And, you know, if I ever in the future have money and I open up a restaurant or something, he's the first person I'm contacting, like, hey, can you come set the whole thing up, be the head chef?
Yeah.
However, what I lacked was, you know, because the majority of people that I worked with were students, which means I was surrounded by younger people, more immature.
Yeah.
And even some of the guys that were older, I felt they were, I don't want to say one-trick ponies, but in a sense, they were sort of content with where they were with their life. You know, they have parked themselves in this company. They have a good pay. They've got a schedule that works for them. They don't want to change anything about it. They're just like, I'm going to keep doing this for
Cruising.
the next. They're cruising. They do this for 50 years. You know, I've got the girl or wife or kid or whatever, and just screw the rest of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that beyond being able to learn and sponge up some of the information relating to the cooking aspect, I wasn't developing any of those things that were important to me. And ironically, you know, you're a member of the what I call the medicine part of life, which is so scary. Like, if you think longest schools, most challenging professions, it's either medical school or like law degree, right? And at the time,
I haven't done medicine as such, but it's like a step, like a position down. Like we don't actually diagnose or anything like that. We just take the X-rays, but there's still a lot in it, right? And it still requires a specialized position. You just have, so like I'm the X-ray person. I just take the pictures, but at the end of the day, like you still have to be pretty smart to do this job. Like you can't be old mate off the street. You have to have a degree. You have to have like all this sign off done. You have to have all this experience. But like in general, working in a hospital is pretty grueling. I don't think many people who don't work in a hospital or emergency services have like done CPR or taken someone to the mortuary. They're in it. That's interesting. That's a big that's a big part of medicine. Like you just, someone's dead, move on. But
I got a huge amount of respect for this because at the time I was in the kitchen, I was dating a girl that was studying. She's studying now to be a doctor, and it was the contrast that I saw between the conversations that I was having with her and the conversations I was having with my friends and the conversations I was having at work. And I was starting to realize that she is striving for something greater, not just in the sense that she has to study all this curriculum, you know, which to a certain degree, some parts of it could be considered bullshit if it's not going to be the end of her profession. Like if she goes into, I don't know, plastic surgery, then a lot of the stuff she's been learning about will go to waste and will just sort of sit dormant somewhere. But I realized that the conversations I was having with, especially at work, with sort of these almost, you know, pathetic, prehistoric, just joking, memeing. I felt like I was, not just that I was stagnating or that I was complacent, but I was almost moving backwards. And it shook me when I looked at, you know, progress of 1 year. And at the start of this podcast, we said, you know, you said you compare yourself to who you were 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I look back 1 year and I'm like, I'm in the same spot. And I was confused.
That's horrible.
And it was a horrible feeling. And I think it prompted me to sort of start making some changes because I still have passion for food, but I'm in no way, shape or form passionate enough to commit to an ordeal of, say, going and working in a Michelin star restaurant and becoming the greatest cook. Because I asked myself this question a while back. I said, what would be the kind of job that you would really want to do? And I said, okay, so on the one hand, it would either be a job that pays well, but gives me enough free time for me to sort of have leeway for my hobbies or maybe some projects. And, you know, you can sort of have, let's say you're working 25, 30 hours a week. That would be something that I would, you know, be able to sign on. The alternative, which is the competitive side of me, the masculine part of me, would want a job which is oriented into the direction of being a leader, having my own team, but most importantly, to constantly seek to be at the highest point in that company. Like, if I really wanted to work for Google, then I don't want to just work for Google. I want to be one of the top guys at Google. That sort of competitiveness drives me. And I realized that both of these were going to be very, very difficult to achieve, especially because I think you need to have a very, you know, specific goal in mind to say, okay, I'm going to go and work for that specific company. And that's a question I should have asked myself back when I was 19 or 20 years old, not not at the age of
Yeah.
25. So I'm seeking
Yeah.
now for an alternative route, which isn't a bad route per se, but I want to make a name for myself that isn't the way I made a name for myself with WarThunder. Because WarThunder is a niche, and the type of content I was making was also a niche, and the style of, like I said, my character, I think went into an extreme to the point where I really was like the Andrew Tate of WarThunder, and it's fine to get the movement started, but it's not who that person is. And actually, speaking of Andrew Tate, and I don't know what YouTube's going to do with this once it's uploaded, but as we're doing this recording, I think the guy's in jail at the moment, right?
Yeah.
And he's an extreme, character in its own. But I think if he's smart, and I think he is, he will probably change quite drastically once he comes out. I would assume that at some point he's gonna start to mellow down and become more likable. Because you look back, I don't know if you follow Formula One, but Sebastian Vettel, who retired with the end of last season, when he was winning championships and he won 4 championships in a row, he was one of the most arrogant bastards ever to walk this earth. And it made you hate the guy.
Yeah.
And then something changed. And he
you just watch him lose.
Yeah, basically. I mean, this is a wonderful quote from, I think it's from the first Spider-Man movie, where, the only thing they love more than a hero is to see a hero fail and die trying.
Yeah.
And it's such, because I'm not a fan of Spider-Man or anything, but that quote is on such a high level that it instantly ranks up the movie. I mean, it's brutal because it's exactly what it is. People love seeing somebody be successful and win until they don't, until they get bored of it. Then it's like,
knock them off the pedestal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Feed them to the lions, and then off they go. On to the next one. But it's kind of nuts. It's just like that progress. That's what you want, right?
Yeah, it's because I
constant.
I looked at myself, maybe the Ego Boy video from Bookends was such a wonderful one because on one hand, it's complete crap because most of it is edited to make me look way worse than I am, which that's the power of YouTube. But in every lie, there's a little bit of truth, and as I thought about it, I thought, damn, you really were an arrogant cunt. Like you went a little bit too far, and you start mellowing it down to a certain degree. Now, I still think that a lot of the characteristics that I built throughout the theOrangeDoom character were fundamentally good and positive and can be and will be continue to be utilized in my life.
Yeah.
It's just about mellowing it down a little bit. Maybe sharing a little bit less and being like I'm a very open person. I love talking to people about everything, and I don't mind revealing some of the vulnerabilities and some of the strengths, but I'm really living 2023 through this. I've said every month I'm going to give myself a rule that I'm going to implement into life. January is the rule of action. So start moving and don't stop. Whether this...
Yes, I like that.
And then I already know in February likely it's going to be about patience, because patience is something I have very little of, and it's way too thin, and you need it. In often situations, you just need to sort of, wait out the storm and just have that patience that things will turn out well. Yeah. And whatever the other rules will be, I'm making a list, active list. I'm following the progress. But I said to myself, 2023 should be a year where you are dissatisfied with yourself to the point that you force yourself to turn your life around. And giving myself deadlines, and goals and what you really want. And I feel that I'm still so blown away by that thing you said about great vines, how you cut down until only the 2 most powerful branches left, and
strip it down to its bare parts, and you absolutely just hone in. You grow from there, like shed away all the excess and just sort of grow yourself a new skin almost.
Yeah, because that's how I felt in October. And obviously in August I decided to leave my girlfriend, which she was great, and leave my job, which was great because together in unison it was comfortable. You know, to this day, my motivation goes up and down every single day, and there'll be moments where if you showed me a big red button that would say, you go back and you're back in that relationship and you're back in that job, I'd press it in a heartbeat. But then I ask myself, yeah, you'll be happy for the next 2 years, say, but then
but will you be happy for the next 20?
No, because in 2 years, I'll be exactly where I am today, in the exact same spot,
Yes.
having made no progress, having gotten no close to the goal that I really dream of, and you'll just be resentful of the world, you know, and that which you have will ultimately be lost. That happiness, that comfort, that girl or that job, it will eventually go away.
Yeah.
And in October, I went through, like, honest to God, probably the most depressive phase of my life, because I'm not a depressed person. I've never thought about suicide, but there were moments where I was like, dude, if I just jump off the balcony, it would just save me all this hassle. And I realized, you know, me with such a strong character, having those thoughts, how many more men are having those issues? And you look at the suicide numbers and it's scary. It really is scary.
Yeah. It's concerning because it's like, it's not actually that hard to pick yourself back up now that you look back on it, right?
No, now I look back at it, I'm like, how was I ever so lost?
So weak, right?
Yeah, but it's also a problem because at the time, I think it was in October, late September, I was very motivated, and I think I got high on the idea that everything was possible, but I hadn't made the choice yet.
No.
There's a wonderful movie, Mr. Nobody, where essentially it's Jared Leto starring. He's a little kid, and his mum and dad are getting divorced. And the whole premise of the movie is that he's at the train station, his mum's boarding the train, his dad is staying in that hometown, and he has to make a choice. And the movie goes through 3 individual options. One is that he stays with his father, one is that he runs off with his mother, and one is that he runs off away completely, away from both of them, you know. And one of the quotes in the movie goes something along the lines of, like, the smoke comes out of daddy's cigarette, but he doesn't go back in. Once you mix mashed potatoes and the sauce with the gravy, you can never unmix them, right?
Yeah.
As long as you don't choose, everything remains possible. And I was in that state. I was single. I was without a job. And so everything was possible. I can have any job I want. I can have any woman I want. I can go in any direction I want. And that freedom has a cost. And this is a theory that I've developed, which is called the slave theory, is that sometimes too much freedom enslaves you because it's trapping, creates an anxiety.
Well, you're suspended in like a jellyfish in the water. You know how they just sort of float with the tide?
Yeah.
You just, I'm not going to make a decision. I'm not going to swim anywhere. And then you just float.
And
it's such a shit feeling.
It's scary because it brought me down and reduced me really to a weak man, in the sense that my true colors were shown, almost like the reality gets portrayed, and you see yourself.
Yeah.
You know, yes, the options are still there. All the freedom doesn't change. It's just your perception of it is suddenly a little bit more realistic. And then I started with, you know, going gradual, because it really, and I think it boils down to that problem that I'm not a very patient person and I want everything immediately. So if I decide that I want to have a certain job, then I want to have that job right now. I'm not, and that's also the cause of, I think, this instant gratification that we get from TikTok videos and all this, you know, pornography, and everything is always accessible all the time, immediately.
Even fast food, man.
Absolutely.
I'm guilty of this. I'm like, so my drive to and from work is in peak hour traffic. Sometimes it's an hour and 20 minutes. It's bad. But like right at the beginning of the journey, on the same street that work is, there's a McDonald's. And the amount of money I've spent just because it is easy, convenient, and it fills you up. And by the time you're ready to, like, you're digesting it, you end up at home. You're like nice and satisfied. You have enough energy for the journey back, especially after a night shift. It's like 8:30 in the morning. You don't really want to like deal with anything. So it's like convenient, easy, but it's just you end up a slave because there's just no, like, you don't give yourself any other options, like, or you don't have the fortitude to resist it, because you just like, I won't make that decision.
I think it's a form
I'll
of excuse almost, where you between choosing to go, let's say in this case for fast food, or
Mhm.
going and cooking yourself a hearty meal, the
Yeah.
excuse is that you can't really be bothered, right? Because you'll be
Mm.
hungry before you get home, and then you have to cook, and then, whatever, I'll just go and can grab McDonald's. If you do this
Yeah.
once, okay, cheat the system, but it becomes a habit very quickly, right? And then you're down that
And it's
rabbit hole.
instant.
Yeah.
Like you hardly have to lift a finger.
Mm.
You just like fill it out on the app, press order, and then it's just there. You don't have to get out of the car, you don't have to start an oven, you don't have to do any cleaning up afterwards, and you just have that instant gratification. And it's like everything else you've described. There's some form of shallowness to it because you're not really going out there and working for it. There's no reward. There's just the dopamine, and then you end up wanting more and more, and so you just become a slave.
And ultimately very unhappy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And often broke or lonely or whatever. You do end up just like in such a miserable position, all because you don't sort of you don't steel yourself and really like go and do something that's good for you instead of what's easy.
Yeah, because in that very, very quick moment, it's just more convenient. But
Yeah.
I noticed that with working out, because it was, you can work out for 1 hour and you already expect to see improvement, and they're often not there. But I do think there is a
Yep.
trick to it, and that's that we were talking about before how you don't say that you're a gunner, right? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
But instead, you create an image of where you want to be,
Hmm.
and that's the image that you strive for. It's almost like, I don't want to say that you create your own god, but you
No.
paint an image in your head. For me, when I'm working out,
Yeah.
when I started back in December, and I would look myself in the mirror, it's not that I would imagine what I would look
Hmm.
like. It's not that I would imagine what I will look like. It's I would see that which I want to see me look like.
Yeah.
And it
Like
creates
mirror as
this.
Erised style,
Hmm.
except it's an actual mirror and you're looking back
Yeah.
at yourself.
And
You know the mirror in Harry Potter?
yeah, which shows you your greatest desires.
Yes.
It's ironic how a lot of these child-based movies and cartoons have so
Oh.
much depth and truth in them if you're able to sort of extrapolate the information.
I watched a guy break down Shrek and Shrek 2. Actually, no, it was just Shrek 2. Like Ratatouille, all these things.
Hmm.
It's like um, there's a level of rejection. Like the character is rejected originally, and they either don't give a shit, they just forge through, um, or they work in the background. They find a way,
Hmm.
and that gratification, you just see it
But
in the
it's what you're saying is they never quit. There's no excuses for them. It's like it's do or die. And
literally,
yeah,
yes.
and all those people, they succeed. I mean, how many people have you heard try? And I'm not saying like the definition of insanity where they try the same thing over and over again, but that they're committed to get somewhere, and they do it
Mhm.
until it eventually succeeds. Because we put man on the moon. Like we look at
Yeah.
WarThunder. All these planes, they literally exist in real life. Somebody designed them and put them together, and they fly, and they make combat in the sky. Someone,
How many people died testing them? Hey.
yeah, and when what was it, Wright brothers, when they were making the first plane, like
Yeah.
I doubt they were surrounded by people saying, "You go, man, yeah, you'll make it happen." It's like, what? No, it's never gonna fly, dude. What are you guys even trying? Just go back to the
Yeah.
farm life or whatever, right? Like, but they were consistently ready to prove people wrong and go that one step further. And this is why at the moment I'm entering this, and I hate the expression, you've probably heard about it, they say monk mode, right? It's like sort of
Oh yeah.
remove everything from your life, women and hedonism and friends, and just disappear into a dark
Yeah.
room and just focus on your stuff. But this, I'm looking at it from more of a mental perspective. For the past month, I've pretty much not used social media. I've just tried not
Mhm.
to look at my phone at all. Just try to get all my focus on that which is important, saying, I'd rather suffer and not have those little bits of dopamine,
Yeah.
so that in the long run,
Trinkets as such.
those trinkets, so I can sit on a more comfortable branch, so that I can, or
Yeah.
so that I can grow my grapevine, right? So I can get
Yes.
those two most important branches. Actually, why is it two? Is there any reason? Because I believe in the rule of three. I think there might be a third one somewhere there.
Well, I think what happens is they end up growing apart from each other. So
One on each
you have
side.
one that grows in one direction and you have one that grows in the other direction. And because of course they're strung up on the line to help them like catch, they like any more would end up grow up, grow down, or grow out to the sides. There's no catch for the vine. Like there's no like it's almost like a fence line what you build along a grapevine, and there's no way to catch it. So I suppose one and two are the best options because one goes to the left, one goes to the right, and then eventually they'll end up growing up and down as well. And like we've had grapevines like that in the past, and they just fill up a wall, because they're just so established. And once you do get like that, like the potential for that grapevine, like it basically could have been propped up as a root, to shield from the wind as a whole structure. It's just incredible how big this thing grew. But like, yeah, it's such an interesting metaphor to take away because you look at that and you strip away all the excess and you just go and hone in on something. Doesn't matter what it is, hone in on it and give it your attention, give it your effort. That could be your work, that could be your family, that could be gym, that could be, I don't know, like it could be like ranked CSGO for all I care. As long as you do something, it gives you a purpose. And when you have a purpose, you have greater motivation to do even better. And so you build yourself up, basically. You just build yourself into this better version of you than what was yesterday.
Yeah. I'm still in love with that thing which Jordan Peterson said, what he said, like, become a monster, unconditionally, just chase your goals, be ruthless, and then learn how to control it. That, I think, is a quote to take home. And what you're saying about grapevines, and this is also why I've decided to call this Simplify Life, is because I believe that most things aren't that complicated. Like, yes, life is complex. If you look at, let's say in the medical field, yes, the human body is extremely complex. Yeah. All the little intricate details working with one another, and if one fails, the rest of it, comparatively will cease to exist. But in general, I think life is really, really simple, and we complicate it beyond belief.
You can even simplify medicine. It's just breathing and brain. Everything else can be absolutely ruined, but as long as breathing, circulation, and brain work, you're fine. And like you see this in intensive care, right? You see, especially with like super little kids, like the premature babies, they're like 26 weeks old. They can't exist out of the womb. They just like the laws, the like methods of medicine struggle to keep kids like this alive, and yet they do, because there's just you just break it down. You just go, okay, how are they breathing? It's fine. Put a breathing tube in their throat. How is their brain? Still needs development. It's fine. Circulation, normal. Give them time to develop, and they put them in a crib that's that's sealed, and then they just like humidify it to make it as much like the womb as possible, and then they end up developing mostly fine. Most of the time they're a bit small. Sometimes they might have breathing problems. Sometimes they might have a couple of other things just because of the nature of the case, but they still live. Like, and most of them still actually live to be mostly okay. Like, it's just incredible. But like someone has gone and put their mind to that. Someone has gone and done the hard yards, tried and regrettably failed. But there are, like, if someone can do that for medicine, like, think about what each individual can do for themselves, and whether that's just fitness or like jobs or relationships or like social, even like just putting yourself out there, or learning to be a better active listener or something like that. You just make it work, and you learn that, like, those little baby steps, you break it down into the simplest form, you'll be fine. It's great. You end up learning a lot too. And you grow into a person that is just way, way better than you could ever have imagined. Like you become that monster.
Yeah. And I think people, they are often miserable because they overcomplicate it and they paint an image that's, like, let's say when I say image, I immediately thought about if you're going to paint something, you'd start with, that's why it's called RGB, right? Red, green, blue. Like just give a person 3 colors and 1 brush, and that's it. And they can make something work with that. But give them, I remember in art class when I was in primary school, they give you all the colors, one of those palettes with like 50 holes. It's like you get lost immediately because you've given the person too many options to choose from. And I don't know how the school system is in Australia. I would assume it's very similar to the way it's here. It's you have primary school, and then you go to, in our cases, we had high schools, which is called like gymnasium, which it's not specific to something. It's not like you go to a high school for computer science. You just go to high school, and they still give you English and physics and biology and this and this and that. It's only after that, which is like 9 years of primary school, 4 years of high school, and then I get to university, which is the first time I'm specifically going in a direction where I'm limiting myself for the further option. What I'm saying is, okay, so I'm going to take all the options of the universe, all the options of the job. So I'm going to go into one branch. And then depending on what that is, you've now got some leeway. As a medicine student, you can then choose like what specialization, let's say you're going to go in. But in case of...
Mixing the potatoes with the mash, right?
Essentially, yeah. And when I went into study...
The gravy with the mash.
Gravy with the mash, yeah. And when I went to study English, it was like, well, wait a minute, I'm now suddenly really out of options. I can be a translator, I can be a teacher. That's pretty much it. If I want to be a writer, I don't need to have a degree. I can just go and do that. If I want to be a public speaker, I don't need a degree for that. I don't see how it benefits me. And it's creating this complexion where I think what I get the feeling of is that I'm running out of time. And it's not necessarily a bad feeling because it pushes me to make more happen quicker. But it's like I don't want to be 30, 35, 40 years old and miserable. I don't want to be working a job that I'm not fulfilled with and have meaningless relationships and friends that don't strive for better and a body that doesn't function and everything hurts. Like it's not the goal. And a couple of days back, I had this just spur of the moment thought where I was like, holy shit, I know where I want to live. Just a random, it had nothing to do with, apartment or house or this. It was just like location, a specific place with a specific climate where I would want to live. And that's become a goal now. It's in the back. I'm not thinking of it consciously all the time, but it's like knowing that I'm moving in that direction. I also know what's required for it, how much that would cost, what that brings with it, right?
You can break it down into smaller pieces from there, right?
Yeah. But ultimately,
because I had the same thing, like exact same. I'm like, I know where I want to live in the long term. It's uncanny. It's like the same thing, and it's like a little country town with like enough infrastructure, but like option for lots of all these different things, and just like living not off the land, but just frugally and with a bit of space.
Yeah,
What was
tired of the city. What was mine?
Yeah.
Well, actually, it started because Slovenia's got a lot of areas, but the area that I've spent the least amount of time in throughout my early life was the coastal region. And the first girlfriend I had was living, let's say, halfway towards the coastal region. So this is about 100 kilometers away from the capital, right? I live in the very center of Slovenia. And I love it here. I like it. I'm just on the outskirts, to the east of the capital. I have farms closer than I have the shopping mall. So I'm not what you'd say a city boy, right? But I like the location for like as a source of relatively quality air and as a logistical place. And if you want to go cycling, you have a lot of these options. But right now it's winter. It's mostly gloomy, it's foggy, it's cold, and it's miserable, and I hate it. And it's been painful to wake up in the morning and get to work because it's like it makes me feel of Boston for whatever reason, like the eastern part of America where it gets all cold and everybody's all grumpy. And so the relationship I was last in, she lived with the family, obviously, in completely the coastal region. And often in the evenings, we would take walks with her dog. And as I was on these little hills overlooking the ocean and the port and this, and we were talking, you're in a relationship and you're chatting, I'd love to live here. Oh, and have this house. And this was the first time that I actually thought to myself, wait a minute, I actually wouldn't mind that. Because a lot of the times women have these, you're in a relationship with a girl and she has these dreams and she'll say, but I want this and I want that. And most of the time you just brush it off and like, yeah, whatever, we'll think about it when we get there. But something here made me go like, I stop there and I look at, this one particular house, for example, which is a beautiful house with a huge garden, and a swimming pool and a beautiful view. And I'm thinking, fuck, I would actually really like being here. And it had less to do, in this case, with the girl, but so much with the atmosphere that you almost...
How did you find it? Did it did it draw you in or...
It just made me, you know the expression working for the weekend?
Yeah.
I was, that part of my life, so basically the majority of last year for me was living for the weekend, with the weekend being the time I got to spend with her.
Yeah.
So I thought. But then I realized it was the energy that I received from her whole family, from the whole environment. It was always sunny where they lived. Everywhere I went, it was always just more, it just felt more happy. Like I was soaking up energy from this environment. And I just saw a different light to life. And it reminded me, as a child, we used to travel with family a lot to Greece. And I always joke that I would love to just live on a Greek island somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Because the people were just warmer, People say, I want to go to Sweden or Switzerland or Germany. I'm thinking, yeah, but the majority of those people still are miserable.
Yeah.
Because you get the snow and you get the fog and the gloomy days and the rain. It's just, ugh. Like I'm just not that kind of person. I want to wake up in the morning and I want to have no socks on my feet and I want to just feel warm and just ready to go out there and do whatever has to be done.
Yeah.
And this is what was so conflicting with me, is because having to go and let go of this woman also meant letting go of that part, which for me was like a safe haven. Sitting in a car for 2 hours to drive to, whether it was her family or the place where she studied, hanging out.
Like a happy
with
place.
It was a really, really happy place. And it felt unnatural because everything was happening so quickly. We got into a relationship very quickly. I got accepted in a very warm way from her family. And at the same time, I'm thinking, look, I love this, but when I'm spending time there, I'm not working on myself. I'm not developing a business or, I was just relaxing.
Wasting
it was
time.
I was wasting time, unfortunately. And I realized that even though I want that feeling, is like maybe in the future, right? Like maybe I'll earn the ability to get that back, whether it's with her or somebody else or on my own.
Yeah.
But I felt like I wanted to earn it. I didn't want it to be, I just happened to meet somebody, and because it just so happened that her family is the way they are and they live where they do and they're the types of people they are, that I got to sort of reap the benefits of meeting the right person at the right time. It felt wrong. It felt like I hadn't deserved to be in that position. And I realized, like we talked about before, is that if I stayed in that limbo for the next 2 years, I would have still lost it. Sure, I would have gotten to enjoy it for another 2 years, but ultimately, I think it would have stung much more, because it would make me feel even more like this is what I want. And because 2 years had passed and I haven't made the progress required, it would now become less attainable. So at the moment, I look at it and I think to myself, well, maybe it's not an attainable goal to think you're going to get the exact thing back, but you can get something similar or perhaps even better. But you have to work. You have to work now and you have to start today, not tomorrow, not in a week, right? And so I've given myself one very specific goal. I won't say until when it is, but it's a very specific, very nice date. Sounds good. And I said, and I have this thing, I think it's Microsoft Tasks, and it's brilliant. I just put in the goals and I'll just because I thought every day you have hundreds of ideas. And every time one of them spurs into my head, I'll just type it down. I'll just, okay, so by that date, I want to have, let's say, a new car. I'll just write it down. And then we'll start ticking them off. One by one, we'll start ticking them off. But I want to have also a overview so that when I look back at it, it isn't just, oh, here's 50 YouTube videos I've uploaded. I want it to be more chronological, more specific, so that you can really see the progress of me as a person, all the things I've accomplished.
Yeah.
I want to feel like I've deserved that which I've gotten, which in that state of life, which I had last year, was wonderful, but I didn't deserve a thing I got. And I wasn't treating people around me the same way. I was being toxic to this girl. I was being disrespectful to her. I was being just unfair. And that's not the person that you want to be, And
no, that's the monster, but it's out of control.
That's even worse. I think that's the not just out of control, but also I think an immature version of the monster, because I wasn't striving for those things I find important. I wasn't doing any bike races. I wasn't it was funny, she was trying to get me to start working out. She was like, hey, look, you've been sick a lot this year. You keep getting these colds. You're all, screwy and weak. You should start working out. And usually when we get advice like that from those that we find closest, we tend to ignore it.
It's tough to digest, isn't it?
Yeah, it hurts in a way, and you're like, screw you, I'm not going to listen to your advice.
It almost feels like you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Instead of, hey, come and improve, come and be a better version of yourself. It sounds the opposite, doesn't it?
It's because these are things you have to just get. You can't be told. And this is what so many relationships, they die off of, because you can't have the woman tell you what you must do in order for her to feel more attracted to you. This is I believe it's called that observing changes the process, right? So if you want to be that better person, you just have to get it. You have to just understand what has to be done. You can't have, and this is unfortunately the dynamics between the sexes. It just, men were satisfied. Like, this girl, I'll like her whether she's, whichever specialization she chooses, whether she's a hairdresser, I don't care. She could be homeless for all I know, and I'll still be attracted to her. But for her to be attracted to you, you have to provide some sort of value. You have to be...
Yeah.
And...
at least on a surface level, yeah.
Well, at least, okay, maybe you don't have to be yet, but you have to be able to first convince her that you're the person who will be able to become.
Yeah, it definitely applies there, for sure.
And this is the problem. Me being a good salesman, I can sell myself in various ways, and it's one thing to sell a promise, it's another to actually fulfill it. And I noticed that I wasn't doing the latter, that I was promising her a life, and you ultimately realize that it falls back to, I think it's, what do they say? It's like, when you really love something, let it go. And that shit stings. Like, it hurts, but you just have to get through it. And ultimately, I think if you do it well, there will be, and this has happened to me once before, where I then received the message from said person. They were like, oh my God, you've become so motivated. Like, I'm so happy for you, blah, 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 And it's like, yeah, I have, and I'm not stopping now. I'm going to keep on going. So it's the pain. You as a man, I think you're constantly converting pain and misery and all these things into the active energy, which you can then use to better yourself. And that will...
It's the hard times that make strong men.
Absolutely.
Shall we wrap things up?
Absolutely. We've gone on for 2 hours and 15 minutes. It was a wonderful conversation. We started off a little bit confused, but I think that's the essence of trying to do something like this.
We've got to find our feet somehow, and then we make the most of it, right?
Absolutely. I want to thank you for taking the time. I don't know when this is going to be uploaded, but I'll make sure to get all the links and all the timestamps so that people can actually get through it in a lively manner if there's maybe a topic they want to skip or are more interested in. There were some issues with the webcam in between. In your case, it was getting a little bit lower quality because of the program that we're using to sort this out. maybe that will change
Yeah,
in
I
the future.
noticed.
It's just the essence of, being in the opposite side of the world, I guess.
I I think so. I think I don't know, like my upload is fine now. I've got like fuck, I can't remember how much. It's good now. Like I've paid a bit more, got a bit more better um bandwidth, and like my PC is perfectly fine with doing it. I don't know, maybe it's a bit of a bug with the server that's in between us, but you know what? It's the stuff you figure out. It's the stuff you play around with, right? Like on one last tangent, my PC, like RTX 4090, but I've got a 1,000 watt power supply, and the 1,000 watt power supply is fine, except it makes a crackling noise at about 250 watts on the GPU. And I'm like, well, that probably shouldn't happen. But it's one of the things that you sort of go through and figure out, and sort of it teaches you a bit more, right? It teaches you how to troubleshoot better. It teaches you to be patient. It teaches you how to find workarounds. And it's good. And that's what we come here to talk about.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm for sure going to have you on here again, maybe even in a live format, so we get questions from everybody. For the rest of you, if you do have any questions, you can always put them in the comment section below, and either me or Spit will get to them. And
I'll be there.
Yeah, so thanks for taking the time, and be good, man.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's good chatting with you again.
All right, cheers, man. Thank you.